COVID-19, how much of a headache's it been? It's an obvious question, but got to get an answer.
Yeah, and I think I probably joined many ranks of people that maybe didn't take it as serious as it was initially. We were on the bus to Coventry when we got the call, and then immediately found out the severity that we were talking about, and it was panic stations to get people home. We may have differed from a few of the other clubs is we went into a complete shutdown. So that on top of what people have faced with COVID was a difficult startup for us. We got the go ahead late. I'm used to putting rosters together late, but this was a incredibly time restricted timeline that we're dealing with. But we got there in the end, and unfortunately, it's part of our lives now. But we just keep moving forward, Nigel.
Yeah, what's it been like with the fitness levels from the guys coming in and also the local guys? Because obviously the local guys haven't been on the ice for a while.
Surprisingly good. I think that we have a number of guys that had 18-month off. I faced much of the concerns that you did, but these guys are young professionals, and I think they probably recognized early as well that if they had hopes of keeping their career going and making a career at ice hockey, their conditioning was going to be key. Now we absolutely had some rust. That was pretty evident in Dundee up on Friday night. They adjusted quick, and it's like riding a bike. It's the same thing for a coach. There was a little bit of apprehension mixed in with my excitement, but as soon as the puck dropped, everybody went back into what they know and what they love.
I take it you gave them some fitness routines to tide them over, did you?
As far as the local guys, we've had a bit of a transition this year. So, yeah, Barry McKenzie, he's becoming one of the elder statesmen in the league, needed to keep on top of his conditioning. Craig Peacock, he's a professional. He came in good shape. But Scotty Jameson, for example, a young guy, he was working with our strength and conditioning coach before COVID happened. So he had all the routines in place. And, it looks initially like it's paid off for him.
You've got a tough schedule with a Coventry Saturday, Belfast at home, big trip. Next weekend, Fife at home, Cardiff, big trip. That's a hell of a start to a season when you haven't been skating for 2 years.
Nigel, get the long ones out of the way early. Even that. That's me polishing the schedule that I'm not particularly fond of. You're right. It is a couple long trips, and we are playing teams that are perennially at the top of the league. I think it's going to give us an indication of where we stand, and B, it's certainly going to be a good benchmark for us and an introduction into the league. But yeah, very, very tough start to our schedule.
And does the Dundee doubleheader give you enough of a platform to build from?
Well, it would be easy to sit here and make excuses. Like we would like our 2 weeks training camp that we normally have. If you think back to a few short weeks ago with the problems that Fife was having with their ice pad, it was really iffy if it was going to go ahead. I have to commend the team at the rink and everybody involved for rectifying the problem. I'm just thankful that hockey's back on the ice here in Fife, and we're thrilled to be in front of our home crowd.
One further point before I let everybody else in. Saturday night, the noise in the arena, you in the dressing room, what did it feel like?
Yeah, I used the words, I'll use them again. There was excitement before. You heard the noise, you heard people in. It was lined up around the building. Nerves crept in as well, absolutely. I think it was we have a whole host of guys that are new to the country. They haven't experienced British ice hockey. I think an extremely busy Fife Ice Arena with everybody excited and positive was a fantastic introduction to that. And, it turned out to be a good night for us. And hopefully that's something that we can continue to bring for our fans. It was fantastic.
Um, Todd, you've been involved in Fife for over 20 years now. The last 18 months, so this must have been the most difficult point in your sporting career.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Brian. I mean, I think that, yeah, when I compare that to what people have had to face over this pandemic, it really pales in comparison. Um, from a personal point of view, the season before was an incredibly tough one. Not only on paper, but just mentally draining and exhausting. And there was, a lot of unhappiness about it. It really gave me a time to recharge my batteries and refocus. It's been a lot of years before I had any opportunity in the winter to spend some time with the girls and reconnect with my family. I did the homeschool at home. I thought it was fantastic. Probably the biggest challenge was the fact that we haven't got home for now 2 years. And I know a lot of people are in similar circumstances, but being very close family, that's probably been the biggest challenge. The sport's there, and I love the sport, and the sport's taking care of me very well. And fortunately for us, so far we've remained relatively unscathed from this. So we count our blessings rather than look back in this, with what ifs or what could have been.
That's a very pragmatic way to look at it. How do you feel the sport has been supported over this very difficult time? Because there has been a huge wrench on resources for the whole world has stopped. The sporting world stopped, basically. Ice hockey has been hit harder than most because for a full year, everything was lost.
Yeah, well, I mean, one, I think that ice hockey has this strange balance of the amount of retiring guys leaving the game and a fresh crop of youngsters coming up. It generally keeps things in check. And, if you add a new team into a league here and there, it upsets the player balance a little bit, but it generally kind of evens itself out. I think with this pandemic, I think that there is probably guys that were going to retire. There was probably guys that were on the bubble that might have said, I could get another year or two out of this. And there was probably guys that thought, the sport now is highly volatile. The news we're seeing in Europe looks worse than it possibly is in some circumstances. I think we've seen a lot of guys leave the game and a number of guys leave the game before they might have, as well as guys still having eligibility on the lower end. It was a tight market. So I think as far as the sport being affected, player availability to me is one. A positive side, I think people are so happy that the sport that they love has come back. I think there's a huge amount of positivity around most, if not all, of the clubs. People are obviously hungry for information. Fife's not the best example in that case, but we were able to put a product on their ice and a host of new faces for them to see. The atmosphere was charged and extremely positive. And that's up to us as a club to make sure that we get better at communicating and, win hockey games for them and just keep it as that family. You probably hear me talking about in a number of interviews. People are hungry for these connections again, being isolated in their houses and being locked away. They're hungry for these connections. They want to get to know these players. We have some restrictions, but we have to overcome these challenges and get our Fife crowd to meet people. So, I think it might have been positive for the sport in some regards.
Yeah, you preempted my next question. It was about the supporters. because they've been sitting at home as frustrated, I was imagining, as yourself and the players. How can you create the experience again, or ensure that the experience is there for the supporters coming along to any club, actually?
Well, as I mentioned, I think people are incredibly hungry for information, as you know. So it's providing people with that. I think that we have a new social media team who are just finding their feet, but they're incredibly enthusiastic and hungry to have information to get out. So I've told them that I'm extremely happy to work with them, closely. We have an enthusiastic supporters club that got up and running and is keen to be involved. So it's just ensuring that all these people feel an attachment to the team. They're certainly thanked for their efforts, and for us, that fan experience, like you mentioned, it's sitting there, it's ready. I was taken aback about how many people were in the building. I wasn't sure if people were going to be nervous getting into crowds again. We do have an older crowd in Fife here. They turned out in numbers, and it was fantastic to see. So to me, it's not about recapturing it. It's more about now maintaining it and building on it.
And finally, from me, looking ahead to this season, the fact that nobody has really played any games for so long, and a lot of the squads will have changed over that period of time. How long do you think it will take before we have an idea as to who's pushing upwards, who's struggling, who's going to be the kings at the end of the season?
I think pretty quickly. You know what? Like, we probably have a split of players that took the time off and played through, found a league to play in through. And we will get an indication of that early. One of the first questions was the tough schedule. I think we're going to get, and I'll just back up for a second. We have almost an entirely new team, except for a couple faces and Shane Owen returning in net. We have an idea what they can do just from a couple of friendlies, but these upcoming weekends will give us a benchmark of what we need to bolster the squad with if we do, what direction we need to look. And, I think that possibly the club I work for here as a whole, we've been maybe hesitant to make a change that is required by the club. And it's been my job to find a way to get the best out of a guy. I think in this situation here, and for Fife to have a successful season, everybody's going to get an opportunity to play, but we always have to be on the lookout to make this squad better. And that's what we'll be doing.
So obviously we had a couple of friendlies there, but obviously it's down to actual league business this weekend. So Sunday night at Belfast, are you expecting a different atmosphere than was last weekend?
Absolutely. I mean, now it's, the business ends begins, and Belfast are perennial contenders for the crown of the league. It's a team that we've had varying degrees of success with, certainly at home. And it is our building. I think that we'll see another incredibly busy Fife ice arena. But this is, I was discussing with them at training this morning, this is going to be certainly up a number of notches from the pace that was played on Saturday night. And we need to be prepared because they have a very well built team, and I'm sure Adam will have them ready to go.
Yeah. Have you still got one player to come to fill the roster?
We do. Yes, I had that player signed, and for the second time in my elite league coaching history, he was not eligible for a visa. So we are currently on the outlook for our last player. And as I told you guys earlier, it's not a fantastic market for it now. So that is taking up the lion's share of our time to fill that roster spot.
Are you anticipating getting a player in before the weekend, or just is it just going to take how long it takes?
My opinion, it would be very fortunate for us to have that player in by the weekend.
Okay. Am I correct? You've got a new equipment manager coming in as well.
Yes, he arrives tomorrow morning.
Okay. Are you able to tell me anything about him, or?
Yeah, no. His name's Mike Hildebrandt. He has been a trainer in the professional leagues in North America. We're bringing this guy in with the vision to come in and do the job, but also B, train up a local guy to the standards that we require. And because the ultimate goal is to have somebody local doing the job full time and for many years to come. So we'll be looking for him to be a mentor of sorts, and so we'll be putting some information out that once he gets in and gets settled.
So as you look back, I take it you've had the time to look back on the games with Dundee. What are the biggest positives you can take from those two games from your point of view?
I think our compete level, Friday night, we knew that we had very low expectations of that game. I don't think our guys recognized the local rivalry, and being together for 2 days, and I've only skated 2 times, some of them in months. We are far from the finished product. I think a big positive is on the Saturday night was the big bounce back. Their compete level was significantly higher. From a coaching perspective, that's quite heartening. And you know what, our Fife fans, they're quite a discerning eye, and certainly just the feedback from around town. I think when you have a bunch of new players come in, there's a little bit of apprehension there. They have their favorites normally, but there's already a number of names being bandied around for their favorites. So that's kind of a tipped hat for early approval. Now we just have to continue to earn that.
Now, you've been in Fife for over 2 decades, as Brian touched upon earlier. So you speak to a lot of people, you know a lot of people. Can you give us an idea of what Saturday meant to the fans? You've told us how it meant to you, but what did it mean to the fans to be back in the rink after so long, after everything that's happened, and finally seeing their team again?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a smaller town here. So when you're walking around on the time off, that invariably is the central question: when are we getting back on the ice? So I was never really, although we were on the complete shutdown, I was never really far from the game because I was discussing it most days with people. I think by Saturday's response, we didn't have the video from that game. It would have been a great game to have video from. They were loud from start to finish, and people were walking out of there with smiles on their faces. Certainly the feedback I've had after from meeting people down the high street or down the park has been exceptional, and the overwhelming response was they're just thrilled to be back. And the response of my players after the game was it was an unbelievable experience. They hadn't experienced anything like that. You've been around a Fife crowd when it's bouncing in here. Mm-hmm. And it's something to behold. So we want to build on that momentum and hopefully keep it going this year.
Now, you missed a couple of players at the weekend, notably James Isaacs and Christian Blumenschein at the weekend. How much does having them available for this weekend give you a boost ahead of, as we've already touched upon, 2 very tough games?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very fortunate. Richard Griegers, who's bounced around up here for years, he's kind of a mainstay in Edinburgh. He was kind enough to come over and skate with us and guest with us in those games. And Barry McKenzie, we pushed him into the back end. So the fact that we were able to compete and grind out a result on Saturday night is quite heartening. But to add an experienced guy like Isaacs with his compete level and his physicality, and of course Christian, who's new to these shores, but will play a key part in our back end. It's a huge boost, and getting us close to our full lineup.
Now, you talked earlier about how tough the last full season was and where you ended up. You took the time out to reflect, as you've said. Has the 18 months away refreshed you for the challenge ahead?
Oh, it's something that I certainly mentioned earlier. It's something that I needed after being like so mentally exhausted, and we hadn't faced that type of adversity and difficulty. We've been quite fortunate in years previous with continuously making the playoffs and getting to Nottingham a number of times. That was unfamiliar territory for us, and somewhere that we didn't feel comfortable, somewhere where we didn't want to be. So having the time off to reflect and kind of take stock of where we're at and what we were trying to accomplish in Elite League by building every year, gave us that boost again. And the time off was what was probably personally very good for me.
And as finally for me, as for your team this season, what do you want to see from your team? What's the biggest attribute that they have? I'm mindful of the fact it's early days and you're still getting to know them, but what's the biggest attribute you think they have?
Well, they're young and hungry. I think that our speed is going to be key, and that interlaced with that work ethic that we saw on Saturday night. If they do that and they can hound the puck like they were, and for whatever reason, and I know it's early days, but our power play looked pretty slick with us just working on it for 30 minutes. They look quite connected. So as soon as these players get to know each other a little better, I think we're going to see our special teams numbers hopefully go up. And it's a young, exciting, and kind of unknown team right now. So you're right. But we definitely have a lot of positives that we're looking at.